Good Saturday morning and welcome to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Executive Randy Porter, the show that's talking about all the great things happening in our community. We've got a great show for you today. Christmas is only a few days away and hopefully you're in a great Christmas spirit with all your shopping finished. Well, okay, maybe you still like a few gifts that you're still working on, but I hope you'll take a break this morning and be a part of the show. Today is going to be a fun show as my special guest is the voice of the Upper Cumberland and the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame's newest inductee, Mr. Philip Gibbons. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thanks, Randy. Pleasure to be here.
I get to turn the table today.
You're asking the questions.
I'm
right?
asking the questions. I've been with you on numerous shows before in the past several years, and you've always been interviewing me on something. Now I get to interview you. First of all, congratulations.
I appreciate it, Randy.
What an honor to be selected in the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. And I know that has to be humbling when you look at all the other people before you that have been inducted. It's just got to be humbling, isn't it?
It is. It certainly is. I'm honored and all of the above when I think about all the men and women who are in the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. To know that my name is going to be there, it's pretty exciting.
Pretty exciting, especially for a young boy from Allgood.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, to think, I'm guessing you're probably living the dream when you think about being born and raised in Putnam County and Allgood.
Right.
Did you always want to be a radio personality?
Well, first, I've never lived any place else other than Putnam County, Allgood, Tennessee. From a very early age, probably 4 or 5 years old, my parents would tell me that I would pretend to be like a TV newscaster or weathercaster, and I would go into this closet and there was this wall that I could actually at that point, I think I was so fascinated. There was a weather forecaster in Nashville. Some of you folks may remember him, and his name was Bob Lobertini.
Absolutely.
He was a colorful guy. And it was in the day when he would actually draw the high pressure, the low pressure.
With a magic marker.
With a magic marker.
Absolutely.
And I think that's when I got the fever. So I would go in this closet, and I don't know if I had some sort of a board that I could mark on, but I guess I would try to draw the highs and lows and pretend to be the weather
That you were the
guy.
weatherman.
Then I would rig up a microphone, put tinfoil over something, one of my mother's cooking utensils, and I would pretend to be, at that point it was kind of television.
Yes.
And then it kind of shifted to radio. And I started in 1974, and here I am today.
That's an amazing success story. You grew up like I did, though. Were you the remote control when it came for the TV? When you had to go out and turn the antenna?
Well, I was going to say, we didn't have remote control then. You're right.
We were.
Yeah, exactly. We were. We had to turn the set. You know, at that time, we got 5, 4, 2, and I think at that point it was Channel 8.
Yes.
And there was WDCN out of Nashville. Let's see. And on a good day, if the wind was blowing just right, you could get WBKO, Channel 13 in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yes.
I thought that's a big deal. We've got WBKO.
And
yeah, that was our choices.
It was. It was always the snow start coming in, or you need to turn the antenna a little bit.
Exactly.
Philip, go outside and turn it back the other way.
That's right.
It's amazing how technology has changed.
It certainly has, especially in my industry. Oh my goodness, the changes that I have seen from those early days in 1974 of spinning records to all digital now. It's just unbelievable.
How did you get your start in radio? How did that happen? Tell us a little bit about that.
I became friends with the chief engineer at the radio station at that time. Okay, well, let me rewind just a little bit. If I remember correctly, the church that I attended had a radio broadcast at WPTN, and you may remember when WPTN was on the square.
Yes.
I think we've talked about this, above where Poets is now. During those days, it was McMurray Robertson department store. So we would have a radio broadcast there, and I became friends with the He was actually the engineer, but he was also the announcer on duty. And we just started talking back and forth, and I said, you know, I might want to learn how to do this. So that's kind of how it all began. And Austin Stinnett is his name. He's still around. And he was the one who kind of trained me.
Got you started.
Got me started.
How old were you?
15.
15 years
15.
old. You're in the radio station. AM, I'm guessing?
It was, at that point, it was AM.
Was it back in the day when you had to sign off with the national anthem?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We would sign on with probably the national anthem and then sign off with the national anthem. To this day, I can remember exactly what I had to read before I turned the transmitter off.
You can still remember that? I would.
Would you like for me to do that?
I would love to hear that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes another day of broadcasting on WPTN AM and FM. WPTN operates on the frequency of 1550 kilohertz. Join us tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. when we resume another day of broadcasting. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.
Isn't that great? That is great. And I remember those days.
Oh my.
15-year-old.
15 years old.
Doing the radio.
Exactly. And I couldn't even drive. My parents would have to drop me off and pick me up. We signed off. We worked 24 hours a day. So, you know, my dad worked. My mother didn't work at that time, so she would pick me up at 11 o'clock.
Isn't that amazing? We're talking to radio personality Philip Gibbons this morning. Philip, you must have had some great parents that were,
yes, absolutely,
that were willing to make sure that your dream of being a radio announcer was going to come true. So they picked you up at the radio station and every night when you got off from work?
They certainly did. Of course, it wasn't every night. I was strictly part-time. Mm-hmm. But yes, until I was 16, you know, they would transport me back and forth, and finally got driver's license. And
able to drive.
Yeah.
So, WPTN to start with, where did you go from there?
Well, in 1980, Drew Huffines and Bob Gallagher bought WPTN, and they moved the radio station to where we are now at 698 South Willow Avenue. They applied for an FM frequency. Mm-hmm. All this is coming back.
It's great history.
I may have part of this, some of this may be a little incorrect. Rewinding back to the square, WPTN studio. We did have an FM radio station at the time. It was WPTN FM. We changed the call letters to WGSQ, which today, WGSQ FM, is the country giant.
Yeah.
But that's our call letters. So we moved over here, and we've been here ever since.
Wow.
And then Bob and Drew sold the radio station early 80s, and then it was the American Network Group, Paxson Communication, Clear Channel Communications, and now Zimmer Broadcasting. Right.
An amazing amount of history there, going all the way back to where it was next to the square to where the present location is today.
Exactly.
We are talking with radio personality Mr. Philip Gibbons this morning on Today in Putnam County here on News Talk 107.7 and 1400 The Hub. I'm Randy Porter, your host. Our special guest this morning is local radio host and, in my mind, radio icon, Mr. Philip Gibbons from here on the Country Giant. Glad to have you with us, Philip.
Thanks, Randy. Good to be here.
We've been talking about your life growing up in Putnam County and how you became a radio personality. In my memory, there was one thing that really changed radio here in Putnam County, and it was when the Country Giant came on and went to 100,000 watts. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that process. We were talking about Drew Huffines and Bob Gallagher, two dear friends of mine. When they purchased the radio station and moved it over here, at that point they applied with the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C. They wanted to increase the power from 3,000 watts to 100,000 watts. So that took a few years for that to come to fruition.
Not a small task.
Not a small task.
Yeah.
It's a major undertaking, and it's quite expensive. At that point, we were 94.3 WGSQ FM. It was Q94, 94.3. So in order for us to increase our power to 100,000 watts, we had to get approval from the FCC, and we had to move the dial from 94.3 to 94.7.
Wow.
So that happened. When that happened, Bob Gallagher and Drew Huffines, they sold the radio station to the American Network Group.
Okay.
They took over. They brought in Dave Thomas out of Nashville. He was the general manager at WLAC.
Yes.
Dave Thomas still lives in the Upper Cumberland, and he was the general manager of the radio station at that time. That's when it became 100,000 watts.
Well, that totally changed everything, though, didn't it?
I think it changed radio in Cookeville forever. We go from becoming a local station to a regional radio station.
All of a sudden, Philip Gibbons is being heard in Nashville and all the surrounding counties. It totally increased your market, right?
It did. It really, our market presence, certainly, but at the same time, we still wanted to be that local radio station and never forget Cookeville and its municipalities.
Right.
But we're also serving a larger area. So that's kind of where we are today.
Game changer.
Game changer. Exactly.
We're talking to Philip Gibbons, our local radio personality here in Putnam County on Country Giant, who has just been inducted into the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. Philip, I think about your history. You're on your 45th year, right?
Right.
In radio broadcast. That's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I saw a stat somewhere the other day that maybe the younger generations come on, they're changing jobs 7, 8, 10 times during a lifetime. You stuck with the same one, and what a career. And I was thinking the other day about all the people that you probably met, and I was looking at on your Facebook page and getting some data behind you. Josh Turner, Lady Antebellum, Luke Bryan, all these country music stars you have met. Talk a little bit about that, what it was like to have those people here in the radio station or other places that you were going. Some people think that it's just about coming to the radio station every day, doing your show and going home. That's not the life of Philip Gibbons.
No, that is absolutely correct. And somebody asked me recently, when are you going to retire? Well, first of all, I can't afford to retire, but I'm still having fun. I look forward to coming into work every day. Now, I'm probably when I dread coming in, maybe that's when I'll think about stepping back. But right now, I still love it. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy hopefully serving the community. What was the original question? Sorry.
That's okay. All the entertainers you've been able to meet in your lifetime.
Right, exactly.
That's got to have been amazing to sometimes see those stars.
Oh my!
When they're in the beginning.
Right, and you have no idea. That's one thing I've learned, to never take any new artist for granted that's coming in, because you never know. For instance, Lady Antebellum, we were their very first radio stop when they got signed by Capitol Records. Of course, we had no idea. We knew they were good, but we had no idea the success that they were going to achieve. Josh Turner, Luke Bryan. I found a picture of me and Luke Bryan from when he first visited the radio station. I barely knew who he was. Now look at Luke Bryan.
Unbelievable.
So whoever comes through that door with a guitar on their back, make sure you take them seriously, because you just never know.
Well, that's something you've been great about. Listen to you over the years and bringing those artists into the station, interviewing them. Sometimes they come in with their guitar and they're playing. They're their own band.
Absolutely.
That's it. And for those people I know that's got to be nervous for them to do that, but for you to allow them to do that to get your career started, that's got to be great.
Well, it is. It's a great feeling, and honestly, I don't think there are too many radio stations in this country today that allow that to happen, but we do. Of course, you have to be careful. You really have to be selective and careful, but I think it adds a new element to the show, and that's how Loretta Lynn got her start. It's like she would take her record to radio stations and say, "Hey, I want you to play this."
And they did.
And they did. Exactly.
I think it's great. I think it talks volume about who you are and what you become in the radio business. We're talking to Philip Gibbons this morning, Country Giants radio personality. Philip, One of the things that that folks may or may not know, the life of a radio personality doesn't stop at the radio show on a day-to-day basis. I see you all over the county. You're the MC at a lot of our local charity events. I see you at the CMA Fest. You're on the Grand Ole Opry. How do you find the time to be able to do all that and still do the job here at the radio station?
Well, you know, I love it. I absolutely love it when someone asks me, hey, will you MC our event? Will you do this? It just expands, I think, the brand of the radio station. It's something I thoroughly enjoy. It's an honor. As I said, I guess when I get the feeling that maybe I don't want to do this anymore, that's too much, maybe that's when I'll start thinking about pulling back a little bit. But it's just a great honor, and I love to be involved in the community. I love to be involved in the country music industry. So usually when someone calls, I have a hard time saying no.
Well, you do a great job.
Well, thanks. There are times my wife says, Philip, you need to tell them no this time. I can't.
You do a great job of all of that. And CMA Fest, going to it, being the announcer for a lot of that. One thing I want to talk about is the Grand Ole Opry.
Sure, absolutely.
Do you remember the first time you stepped on the stage and announced the Grand Ole Opry?
I do. For 10 years, we've had a partnership with, we've had a partnership longer than 10 years with the Grand Ole Opry, but they have a few radio stations, few regional radio stations that they invite their listeners to enjoy the show at a reduced price. And so we call it Country Giant Night at the Opry.
Wow.
Once a year, our listeners will get a discounted ticket price, and then I'll be co-hosting a segment of the Grand Ole Opry. So I've done that for 10 consecutive years.
That's amazing.
And it's a great honor to step on that stage. I've made a lot of friends. It's been awesome. It's been awesome.
You still get nervous stepping on the Grand Ole Opry in front of all those people or at CMA Fest?
I do get nervous, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I feel confident. I feel like, I can do this. But it is a great honor, and it's not something I take for granted. And yes, there are some butterflies, but once you get behind that microphone and you've got your script there, whatever, it's just...
You love it.
I love it.
And that's the key. I tell folks, you've got to love your job, because if you don't, it affects the whole rest of your life, from your family life and everything else. And if you don't love your job, go find something that you do love.
Absolutely.
We're talking to Mr. Philip Gibbons this morning on Today in Putnam County here on News Talk 107, 1400 The Hub. I'm Randy Porter, your host. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Executive Randy Porter, the show that's talking about all the great things that are happening in Putnam County. Today we have a good friend of mine and radio personality, and I call a radio icon here in Putnam County, Mr. Philip Gibbons, and we've been talking about Philip's life and being inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame. You have another job, Philip.
I wear several hats.
I don't know how you find the time. Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. Okay. It goes back into the 1980s, I guess, that you've been doing the broadcast?
Early 80s. I'm not sure if I've told you this story or someone else, but it was Jim Ragland, former head football coach. Jim came back to the university in the early 80s I think he came back to do promotions for the university.
Yeah.
And he said, Philip, if there's ever an opening, would you like to be our football public address announcer? I said, absolutely. Well, at that time, Eldon Leslie, the former director of the chamber, was the announcer. So he retired, and I said I'd be more than happy to. So my first season as Golden Eagle PA announcer for football was Gary Darnell's first season. I'm not exactly sure when that was, 81, 82. But anyway, I have been the PA announcer since then, and maybe I've missed 3 or 4 games during that time.
In that whole
maybe 3 or 4
career, you missed 3 or 4 games.
Maybe 3 or 4 in 30-something years, and then shortly after that, the opportunity presented itself to become the women's public address announcer for basketball, and I've been in that role also since the 80s.
Is it difficult being an announcer for a sports event?
In football, if you've got a great spotter, it makes your job a lot easier. And someone says, well, what's a spotter? Well, he's the guy, and by the way, I've had several spotters. They've all been great. But Bobby Garrison,
yes,
many of you know Bobby. He's a football official, a high school football official. He's my spotter. He sits right beside me. And the role of the public address announcer is not that of a play-by-play announcer. I'm not describing every play on the field. I'm basically saying, tackle made by so-and-so, or, pass complete to so-and-so.
Right.
But my spotter, he's got the field glasses on.
He's feeding you the information.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, 83 made the tackle, 32 made the catch. If you got a good spotter, then it makes my job really easy.
He could make you or break you.
He can make me or break me, exactly. And I've had some that it's like, oh, are you sure about that? Because once it comes out of that microphone,
it's gone.
It's gone. You
can't take it back. So is one harder than the other, basketball or football?
I don't really think it is, because basically at basketball, I'm just saying, I'm introducing the starting lineups, that I'm, telling who made the basket, who the foul was on, how many fouls that is, and reading a few announcements. So it's not a difficult job.
And after you've done it that many years, it's kind of secondhand. We're talking to Mr. Philip Gibbons this morning, local radio host here on Country Giant, and the new recipient being inducted into the Tennessee Hall of Fame. I also want to talk finally, I was amazed, as we've been talking about, not only do you do your radio show and all the events and everything, you're involved in a lot of clubs and charities and everything. I was looking at a list: Tennessee Alzheimer's Association, Rescue Mission, the Lions Club, Shriners, Susan G. Coleman, Adopter for the Cookville High School, Master of Ceremonies for a lot of events. The one, though, that really stuck out to me was St. Jude's.
Okay.
We support St. Jude's, and for most people that may not know, St. Jude's, tremendous thing they do for
Absolutely.
children at no cost to those parents
None
down there.
whatsoever.
Over $1 million that the station and you have raised over the years?
Through the years, we have a radiothon each year, and through, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 of those radiothons, our listeners, thanks to our listeners, we have raised in excess of $1 million for the kids at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
That is absolutely amazing. We have a lot of great charities in Putnam County. We see, and in my past life as the EMS and 911 director, a lot of kids that we'd have to transport or fly out that were sick or injured, and go to that St. Jude's, and how they take care of the families and the children down there is amazing. And
It is.
And for y'all to raise that kind of money for that charity is absolutely great. I hope you keep that up.
Well, thank you. That pulls on folks' heartstrings. I was privileged to be at the hospital and take a couple of tours. That changes everything. You can talk about it and you can get folks to call in, but when you actually go and see what that hospital does and what they do, then that just changes your perspective on everything. On the radiothon, and it becomes real at that point.
Makes you appreciate good health
and
the life that we have.
You betcha.
In our final moments here, is there one moment that just sticks out in your career that you say, wow, that's a moment that I'll never forget? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay. You're not putting me on the spot. I mean, there's a few things like, co-hosting the Grand Ole Opry. That's a career highlight. Being inducted into the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. That is a career highlight. Meeting Garth Brooks. But I don't know that there's one thing that I can just say, wow, that's it, There's just been so many wonderful things happen.
You've been very blessed.
Well, I appreciate it.
What a great career. We've been talking to Mr. Philip Gibbons, radio personality here at the Country Giant, new inductee into the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. Philip, I'm going to say that you're truly an icon, especially in our community, not because of the radio show, but because of all the things that you do in our community and being so involved in giving back to the community. I think in most places that I go that you're at, we could all put on blindfolds, and when you step up to that microphone, we would absolutely know your voice anywhere we are.
Oh,
That's great. And you've got truly had a great career. And I
Thank
want
you.
to thank you for all you do for our community and
Well,
for
I
everything
appreciate that, Randy.
that you give back. And congratulations on your inductee into the Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.